There is something fascinating about how the human body responds to challenge. For much of life, movement alone is enough to maintain strength and vitality. A person walks, climbs stairs, carries objects, and the body naturally adapts to those daily demands. But as the years pass and the body moves beyond 50, the rules of biology begin to shift in subtle but important ways. The muscles that once maintained themselves effortlessly now require a clearer signal to stay strong. This is where the idea of resistance becomes deeply meaningful. When scientists study aging muscles, they observe that muscle fibers are constantly renewing themselves. Old proteins break down, new ones are built. And the balance between these two processes determines whether muscle grows stronger or gradually fades. In younger years, even modest activity is enough to keep that balance stable. But after midlife, the body becomes more selective in how it responds. It begins to prioritize efficiency. A muscle is not regularly challenged with meaningful resistance. The body interprets that as a signal that the muscle is no longer essential. This is why repetition alone, such as walking the same pace every day, may eventually produce fewer benefits for muscle strength. Walking is rhythmic and gentle, which makes it wonderful for circulation and cardiovascular health. Yet the body quickly learns that the demand placed on the muscles is predictable. Once that demand becomes familiar, the muscles no longer receive a strong stimulus to rebuild or strengthen. They simply perform the task with minimal effort, conserving energy in the process. Resistance changes this conversation completely. When a muscle pushes against gravity, lifts weight, or controls the body during movements like standing up from a chair, the muscle fibers experience tiny mechanical stresses. These stresses are not harmful. In fact, they are essential signals. Inside each muscle cell are sensors that detect tension and pressure. When these sensors are activated, they trigger a cascade of biological responses that tell the muscle to adapt. The body begins producing more contractile proteins, strengthening the fibers so they can handle the demand more easily next time. Blood flow increases to nourish the tissue. Nerve connections improve, allowing muscles to fire with better coordination. Over time, even small amounts of resistance training can lead to noticeable improvements in strength, stability, and metabolic health. What makes this especially important after 50 is the natural process of muscle decline that tends to accelerate with age. Without resistance, the body gradually reduces the size and number of certain muscle fibers, particularly those responsible for power and quick reactions. These fibers are crucial for everyday tasks, like rising from a chair, catching balance during a stumble, or climbing a step with confidence. When they weaken, simple movements begin to feel harder, and the risk of injury quietly increases. But the remarkable truth is that muscles remain incredibly responsive even later in life. Research consistently shows that people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond can rebuild muscle strength when they introduce resistance into their routines. The body does not lose the ability to adapt. It simply requires a clearer signal that strength is still needed. Even a simple movement such as lowering the body into a squat and rising again can provide that signal. The muscles must work against gravity, stabilize the joints, and coordinate with the nervous system to complete the movement smoothly. Each repetition becomes a conversation between the brain and the muscles, reinforcing the idea that strength remains a valuable part of daily life. Over time, this gentle but consistent challenge encourages the body to maintain muscle tissue rather than letting it slowly disappear, allowing strength, stability, and confidence in movement to grow quietly beneath the surface of everyday activity. There is an assumption many people carry into the later decades of life, an idea that endurance is the foundation of staying capable. We see people walking long distances, tracking steps, celebrating how far they can go without stopping. Endurance certainly has value, supports the heart, improves circulation, and encourages the lungs to remain active. But when we look carefully at the moments that truly define independence in daily life, a different quality quietly emerges as more essential. That quality is strength. Independence is not measured in miles walked. It is measured in movements that seem small but hold enormous meaning. Standing up from a chair without assistance, climbing a short flight of stairs while carrying something in your hands, reaching down to pick up an object and rising again without strain. These actions are brief, sometimes lasting only a few seconds. yet they require a surprising amount of muscular force and coordination. If we observe daily life through the lens of biology, we begin to see that most functional tasks rely on bursts of strength rather than prolonged endurance. When a person stands up from a seated position, the muscles of the thighs and hips must generate enough force to lift the entire body against gravity. When climbing stairs, the same muscles repeatedly push the body upward with each step. When lifting groceries or moving furniture, the body must stabilize the spine, while the legs and arms produce controlled power. These movements are not about how long the body can continue moving. They are about whether the muscles can produce sufficient force at the exact moment it is required. This is why strength plays such a profound role in preserving independence as the years progress. As people age, the muscles responsible for these powerful movements are often the first to weaken if they are not regularly challenged. The large muscles of the hips and thighs gradually lose both size and responsiveness. This does not happen suddenly. It happens slowly, quietly, sometimes unnoticed for years. A chair that once felt easy to rise from begins to feel lower. A staircase requires more concentration. Carrying a heavy bag becomes something a person prefers to avoid. What is fascinating from a scientific perspective is that the body adapts very specifically to the movements it practices. Walking trains the body to move forward efficiently over time, but it does not necessarily prepare the muscles for the stronger, more demanding actions required in everyday life. The body becomes skilled at endurance, yet it may still lack the strength needed for brief but important tasks. This is where exercises like the squat become deeply meaningful. When a person practices sitting down and standing up repeatedly, they are rehearsing one of the most fundamental movements of independence. The muscles of the legs must generate force. The core stabilizes the spine, and the nervous system coordinates the motion with balance and control. Repetition strengthens the exact pattern the body uses dozens of times every day. Over time, this simple training translates directly into daily life. Standing from a sofa becomes easier. Climbing stairs requires less effort. The body begins to move with more confidence and stability. Even small improvements in strength can have a profound effect on how freely a person moves through their environment. Perhaps the most empowering realization is that independence is not determined solely by age. It is shaped by the signals we send to our bodies through movement. When muscles are reminded that strength is still necessary, they respond with remarkable resilience. They rebuild, adapt, and support the body in ways that allow daily life to remain active, capable, and self-directed well into later years of life. There is a beautiful misconception many people carry about exercise. We often think of muscles as separate from the mind, as if movement only belongs to the body while thinking belongs to the brain. Yet modern science has revealed something far more fascinating. The muscles and the brain are engaged in a continuous conversation, one that becomes especially important as we grow older. Every time muscles contract, they do more than move bones and joints. They send messages. Inside the fibers of working muscles, a complex biological process begins the moment effort is applied. As muscles contract repeatedly, they release tiny chemical messengers into the bloodstream. These molecules travel throughout the body, carrying signals that influence organs far beyond the muscles themselves. Scientists have spent years studying these substances and have discovered that they act almost like communication letters written by the muscles and delivered to the brain. These signals play a role in regulating mood, supporting memory, and helping maintain the delicate systems that allow the brain to stay sharp and adaptable. In many ways, muscle activity becomes a form of nourishment for the nervous system. It reminds the brain that the body is active, engaged with the environment, and capable of responding to physical challenges. This connection becomes particularly meaningful after the age of 50, when both muscles and the brain begin subtle biological changes. Nerve pathways that once transmitted signals effortlessly may become slightly slower. The brain's ability to adapt and reorganize itself can gradually decline if it is not stimulated regularly. But physical movement provides exactly the kind of stimulation the nervous system needs. When muscles work against resistance, especially large muscles like those in the legs and hips, the body releases stronger and more sustained signals. These signals influence blood flow to the brain, encourage the growth of supportive neural connections, and help maintain the delicate balance of chemicals that regulate focus and emotional well-being. The act of strengthening the body becomes, in a quiet and indirect way, a way of strengthening the mind. Movements such as squats create a particularly powerful form of communication. They require coordination between multiple muscle groups, while also demanding balance and control. The brain must calculate position, adjust posture, and guide the body smoothly through the movement. This cooperation activates regions of the brain responsible for motor control, spatial awareness, and sensory feedback. In this process, the brain is not simply commanding the muscles. It is also receiving a constant stream of information from them. Sensors within muscles and joints report tension, angle, and pressure. These signals travel through the nervous system, helping the brain refine its understanding of the body's position in space. With repeated practice, the communication becomes clearer and more efficient. Over time, this ongoing dialogue between muscle and brain strengthens both systems. The body becomes more coordinated, and the brain maintains the flexibility needed to adapt to new situations. Balance improves, reaction time sharpens, and even mental clarity can benefit from the steady rhythm of muscular effort. What is remarkable is that this communication does not require extreme exercise or athletic performance. Even simple, controlled movements performed consistently can stimulate this biological conversation. Each repetition becomes a signal of vitality, reminding the brain that the body remains active and responsive. In this way, strengthening the muscles becomes more than a physical practice. It becomes a form of neurological care, a quiet partnership between movement and thought that helps preserve both the body, strength in the mind, its resilience as the years continue to unfold. Balance is often spoken about as if it were a mysterious ability, something some people naturally possess and others gradually lose with age. Many imagine it is controlled mainly by the inner ear or by reflexes that fade over time. While these systems certainly play a role, the deeper story of balance is far more dynamic and far more hopeful. Balance is not simply something we have or lose. It is something the body learns, practices, and refines through movement. At its core, balance is the body's ability to organize itself against gravity. Every moment we stand, walk, or change direction, gravity is constantly pulling us toward the ground. The body must continuously make small adjustments to stay upright. These adjustments happen so quickly and quietly that we rarely notice them. Tiny muscle contractions shift the hips, stabilize the knees, adjust the ankles, and align the spine. The brain coordinates all of this in fractions of a second, creating the feeling of effortless stability. As the body ages, this system does not suddenly stop working. Instead, it becomes less practiced when movement patterns grow limited or repetitive. If the body spends most of its time in simple, predictable motions, the muscles responsible for stabilizing posture may gradually lose some of their responsiveness. The nervous system begins to rely on fewer movement patterns, and the ability to react quickly to unexpected shifts can become weaker. This is why falls often occur not because someone lacks awareness, but because the body has not recently practiced controlling itself in varied ways. Small slip, an uneven surface, or a sudden change in direction requires the muscles and nervous system to respond immediately. If those systems have not been regularly challenged, the response may arrive a fraction of a second too late. Movements that require the body to work against gravity can quietly rebuild this responsiveness. When a person lowers themselves into a squat and rises again, the body must coordinate several systems at once. The hips hinge, the knees bend, the ankles stabilize, and the core muscles engage to protect the spine. Throughout the movement, the brain monitors position, pressure, and alignment, constantly adjusting to keep the body centered. What appears to be a simple motion is actually a complex rehearsal of stability. The muscles learn how to control the body during descent and how to generate force during ascent. The nervous system practices coordinating signals between different muscle groups so that the movement remains smooth rather than shaky. Each repetition strengthens not only the muscles, but also the pathways that guide balance. Over time, this training begins to influence everyday movements in subtle but meaningful ways. Standing up feels steadier because the muscles know how to engage together. Walking becomes more confident because the hips and legs can stabilize the body more effectively. Even unexpected movements, such as stepping quickly to regain balance, become easier because the nervous system has practiced managing shifts in weight and posture. The remarkable aspect of this process is that the body adapts quickly when given the opportunity. Muscles that stabilize the hips and legs begin to respond more rapidly. The brain becomes more accurate in predicting how the body will move. The communication between joints, muscles, and nerves grows clearer and more efficient. Balance, in this sense, is not merely about avoiding falls. It reflects the body's ability to organize itself with confidence in the presence of gravity. Through controlled movements that require strength and awareness, the body relearns how to support itself, how to react to change, and how to move through the world with stability that feels natural rather than fragile. There is a quiet truth about the human body that often goes unnoticed in a world that celebrates dramatic transformations and intense effort. The body does not change only through extreme challenges or sudden bursts of motivation. In reality, it responds most faithfully to small actions repeated with patience. Tiny signals, delivered consistently, slowly reshape the internal systems that determine strength, mobility, and resilience. After the age of 50, this principle becomes even more meaningful. Many people believe that meaningful improvement requires strenuous routines or complicated exercise programs. Yet biology suggests something far simpler and more encouraging. The body is remarkably sensitive to patterns. When it experiences the same healthy stimulus day after day, even in small amounts, it begins to adapt in ways that accumulate quietly over time. Inside muscles, joints, and connective tissues, microscopic processes are constantly unfolding. Cells repair minor damage, proteins are replaced, and nerve pathways strengthen their connections. These processes are influenced not by a single effort, but by the rhythm of repeated movement. Each time the body performs a purposeful action, it receives a message that the ability associated with that action remains valuable. Consider a movement as simple as sitting down and standing up from a chair. At first glance, it may appear almost insignificant, something that happens dozens of times a day without conscious thought. But when performed with intention and repetition, this movement begins to create subtle changes within the body. The muscles of the legs and hips become slightly more active. The joints move through their natural range. The nervous system practices coordinating balance and strength together. During the first few attempts, the body may respond cautiously. Muscles that have been underused might feel slightly weak or stiff. The brain may take a moment longer to organize the movement. Yet with each repetition, the body gathers information, learns how to distribute effort more efficiently, how to stabilize the joints, and how to produce force with greater confidence. Over days and weeks, these small adjustments accumulate. Muscle fibers strengthen just enough to make the next movement easier. Tendons and ligaments gradually adapt to the repeated stress, becoming more supportive and resilient. The nervous system refines its communication pathways, allowing the body to move with smoother coordination. What is remarkable is how modest the stimulus can be, while still producing meaningful change. 10 controlled repetitions performed regularly can influence muscle activity more than long periods of inactivity punctuated by occasional effort. The body thrives on consistency rather than intensity alone. When it senses a reliable pattern, it begins investing energy into preserving the abilities required for that pattern. This gradual adaptation also affects confidence in movement. As strength quietly returns, everyday tasks begin to feel less demanding. Standing up requires less concentration. Climbing stairs feels steadier. The body begins to trust itself again, and that trust encourages more movement throughout the day. Activity naturally expands as physical capability improves. In this way, small movements practiced consistently become seeds of long-term vitality. They create a chain reaction within the body's systems, strengthening muscles, stabilizing joints, and refining the communication between the brain and the rest of the body. Each repetition may seem ordinary, yet together they reshape the trajectory of physical aging, allowing strength and mobility to grow slowly but persistently beneath the surface of daily life. As the years move forward, many people begin to believe that the body is slowly closing its doors. Strength fades, flexibility tightens, and energy seems to diminish in quiet increments. It can feel as if the body is gradually surrendering to time, responding less to effort, and less willing to change. Yet biology tells a far more hopeful story. The human body is not designed to stop adapting. It is designed to respond, to rebuild, and to adjust whenever it receives a clear signal that change is necessary. Even in later decades of life, the cells within muscles remain alive with potential. They still contain the machinery required to repair tissue, create new proteins, and strengthen fibers. The difference is not that the body loses the ability to adapt, but that it becomes more selective about when it chooses to do so. The signals that once triggered automatic adaptation must now be a little clearer, a little more intentional. This is where purposeful movement becomes so powerful. When the body encounters resistance or challenge, tiny disturbances occur within the muscle fibers. These disturbances are not injuries in the harmful sense. They are biological messages. The muscle cells interpret these messages as evidence that strength is still needed. In response, they begin to rebuild themselves slightly stronger than before, reinforcing the structures that allow movement to occur. At the same time, the nervous system becomes involved in this rebuilding process. Muscles do not act alone. Every contraction is guided by electrical signals traveling from the brain through the spinal cord and into the muscle fibers. When a movement is practiced repeatedly, these signals become more efficient. The brain learns how to activate the right muscles at the right moment, reducing unnecessary effort and improving coordination. Over time, this communication between brain and muscle becomes smoother and more reliable. Movements that once felt slow or uncertain begin to feel natural again. The body remembers patterns it may not have practiced for years, rediscovering strength and balance that seemed lost. What appears to be physical improvement is actually the result of countless small adjustments occurring within cells, nerves, and connective tissues. This process reveals something profound about the nature of aging. Aging itself does not remove the body's capacity to adapt. What often changes is the level of stimulation the body receives. When daily life becomes more sedentary, the body interprets that stillness as a signal that less strength and mobility are required. Muscles shrink slightly, joints stiffen, and reflexes slow because the body is conserving resources. But when movement returns with purpose, the message changes. The body begins to recognize that strength and coordination are still essential. Even gentle exercises performed regularly can reverse some of the decline that occurs through inactivity. Muscle fibers thicken, joints regain mobility, and the nervous system sharpens its responses. Perhaps the most inspiring aspect of this biological resilience is that it does not demand perfection. The body does not require flawless technique or extreme intensity. It simply responds to repeated signals that movement matters. Each effort becomes a reminder that the body is still part of an active life. Slowly, the sense of limitation begins to shift. What once felt like an unavoidable decline begins to reveal itself as something more flexible, more responsive. The body proves again and again that it is not merely aging. It is listening, adapting, and quietly rebuilding itself whenever we give it the opportunity to do so.